developing story to SportsCenter. Rockets GM Daryl Morey delivering some shocking statements today and calls to front offices. The GM demonstrating how serious he is to improve his team, saying that everyone, that includes Chris Paul, could be dealt if the right deal came along. Our Adrian Wojnarowski joins us now on the phone. Woj, what are you hearing, or tell us more about Daryl Morey's plan to improve the Houston Rockets?
Carrie, in talks with teams around the league in the last several days, Daryl Morey has made essentially his entire roster available. Now, there's really a very limited scope on the possibility of a James Harden deal. That's almost impossible. But everybody else on that roster, if they think can improve that team, create some financial flexibility, they would do it. That would include even Chris Paul, Clint Capella, but Chris Paul's deal is, very cost prohibitive at 34 years old, 3 years, $124 million left on his contract. No deal's untradeable, but you'd probably end up having to take back something that would, maybe further complicate your financial flexibility in any kind of a Chris Paul deal.
All right, so Morey has said in the past that he's in an arm race with Golden State. He's been very clear about being in that arms race. You say that it might be difficult to deal Chris Paul. Let's look at the other players. There's Clint Capella that's available. What kind of market would be available from them, from what you're hearing?
I think Capella is probably the most tradable of the group. He's locked in for another 4 years at a reasonable number. There's some incentive clauses in his deal that can lift his contract. One of the better centers in the NBA, and that's been the name I've been told has been more of a topic here in recent days with the calls that Daryl Morey is generating out of Houston.
Okay, this free agent class is extremely huge. We've got Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. Is this something that you believe Daryl Morey is working towards? Would that even be a possibility?
Houston is a long way from having the kind of salary cap space to get involved with big free agents. They are locked in with James Harden's deal, with Chris Paul's deal. They're not going to find a deal where they would just trade whether it's Capella or Chris Paul's enormous deal into salary cap space somewhere else. They're going to have to take back money if they were even able to do a trade. So the Rockets are not going to be involved in the free agent marketplace this summer as much as they would probably love to be.
All right. Adrian Wojnarowski joining us now here on Coast to Coast with that developing story. That is Daryl Morey is saying everyone is up for trade except for James Harden. Thank you so much. You're joining us right now on Coast to Coast. David, I'll send it over to you.
Okay, Carrie, we got our NBA insider Brian Windhorst in Toronto. The NBA Finals tip-off tomorrow night. We will get to the finals in just a second, Brian. But what do you read into Woj's report? Is this Daryl Morey basically making the admission that, hey, the marriage of James Harden and Chris Paul is not going to work? We've got to change the dynamic somehow?
Not necessarily. I think it's also an admission that they've got a roster that's very expensive, that they don't think there's a championship roster, and an owner who may not want to pay this level of salaries. The team went through an incredible series of trades this year, including trading away their number one draft pick to get under the luxury tax. It's been unclear whether Tillman Fertitta is willing to pay the luxury tax going forward. He has said that he is willing to spend on this roster, but his actions and the actions of the organization have looked the other direction. And one of the things that he has said repeatedly is at least we have this five-man roster under contract for next year, the five-man starting lineup, that now appears to be something that they're even moving away from. So the motivation in the trade would be important. The second thing I want to point out is there's a bit of a back and forth right now between Coach Mike D'Antoni and the front office. D'Antoni told Woj last week that he wants a contract extension. Tillman Fertitta told the Houston Chronicle that he has no problem with Mike D'Antoni going into next season as the last year of his contract. So in addition to some roster issues here, there's some issues with the coaching staff and their happiness. A number of assistants have already been let go. So definitely a time of transition in Houston. We'll see whether they're able to actually improve through this process.
All right, setting up to be a busy offseason for the Rockets and Daryl Morey. All right, let's get to the NBA Finals. The Warriors on this stage for the fifth straight year, but you argue that the Raptors are the best defensive team they've seen in the finals during this run. So how might Toronto challenge Golden State over the next week or two?
Yeah, this is a different type of team that they've really played even in the playoffs these last 5 years. You have to realize Toronto is a beast defensively. They've got two guys in their starting lineup who won Defensive Player of the Year, Kawhi Leonard and Marc Gasol, and a bunch of other guys going into their bench who have made all defensive teams, from Danny Green to Serge Ibaka. Even Pascal Siakam was on the edge of the all-defensive team this year, got a bunch of votes. This is a smart, tough, confident defensive group, and even though the Warriors are one of the great offensive teams in history, there could be a little bit of adjustment here. They're going to have to remember how to play Eastern Conference basketball starting tomorrow night.
Media day today, and then on ABC, Game 1, tipping at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Brian, all right, let's get to the crisis with the Lakers. Of course, our Baxter Holmes had the story yesterday on some of the issues that went on in that Lakers front office, including Magic Johnson's reputed bullying of employees. Here's Magic's response on SportsCenter last night.
Now, I've never sat in an HR person's office in 35 years. 2 years with the Lakers, no HR appearance. Jeannie Buss, do you think Jeannie Buss will allow me to abuse the employees? If that was the case, she would have called me in. Joe McCormick would have called me in, the lawyer for the Lakers, as well as Dan, the other lawyer. It never happened, right? I'm a person who brings everybody together, uplift the employees. I've never abused an employee, and I never will. That's not what I'm all about. Now, Rich Paul had access to the Lakers because he had two clients with the Lakers. He called and said, hey, I'm in Brooklyn. We talked about allowing him to fly back with the team. That's the only time he flew with the team, because he was in Brooklyn, and I allowed him to do it. That was on me. I allowed him to do that. Then let's go to, Rob and I, when we were there, we worked well together. But the little things that was going on behind the scene, that bothered me.
That was last night. Today, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver joined Get Up. And as you might imagine, he felt optimistic about the Lakers restoring the luster.
I know Jeannie knows how to manage a team. And sure, when things start to go wrong, a lot of fingers get pointed. People like to pile on, but they'll figure it out.
All right, Brian, so a ton of negative publicity. Front office looks something like a dumpster fire. How bad is this for the Lakers moving forward?
Well, I think that the Lakers' maneuvers over the last year and a half show an organization that really didn't have a streamlined way of thought or an infrastructure in the way that they were approaching their outer moves. As far as working for the organization, if you talk to any team, you could probably find employees who were disappointed, unhappy with the way they were treated. It's kind of the nature of the workplace. We just don't have enough information. But Magic is correct. He doesn't have a reputation for being a difficult person to work for. And, there's all kinds of conflicting information, because some of the other things people have complained about with Magic was that he's never there. He was never in the Lakers front office. And so you have one person saying that he was bullying, another person saying he was never there. It's all very conflicted. What we can judge the Lakers on is the way they perform outwardly, and they have not performed at a high level outwardly. But I think long term, David, this is really more of an embarrassment than it is damaging. Ultimately, I don't think that free agents are going to, be affected by this information. They're going to think about the Lakers the way they think about them. And I do agree with Adam Silver. There is probably no organization better positioned to rise than an organization with the history and the location of Los Angeles that the Lakers have on their side.
There you go. Brian Windhorst from Toronto getting us ready for the finals on a busy day in the NBA. And coming up, Kawhi Leonard's game. We know it's evolving, what the Warriors will have to do to shut him down in the finals. By the way, Toronto making history here. The Warriors, the first team in the common draft era, which goes back over 50 years, to reach the finals without a lottery pick on its roster. Kawhi was drafted 15th when he came out, just outside the lottery.
All right, so Raiders right out. Antonio Brown addressed the media for the first time from the Raiders offseason training program and had nothing but praise for his new quarterback, Derek Carr. He says he's really growing and they're having a relationship. They're, quote, making a lot of deposits, so we have a lot in the bank. For more on this developing relationship, Josina Anderson joins us now here on Coast to Coast. So, Josina, you spoke with one of Antonio Brown's new teammates yesterday. What kind of impression is he making on his team?
Well, Carrie, when I asked Raiders wide receiver Tyrell Williams, who joined the Raiders this offseason after the last 4 years with the San Diego Chargers, just how AB is standing out in practice right now, he said he is absolutely having an impact on their wide receiver group, and is the way that you can tell that he puts so much time into his craft. He said, I feel like he's elevating my game. in the game of the rest of the wide receivers. So I asked him, well, what specific note do you feel like you've taken away from him? And he said it's very clear. It's the way that he gets off of the ball. There's absolutely no wasted movement. The way he gets up on the DB, it reminded me of this clip that I took of him at USC practice with OBJ and Baker Mayfield, just talking about how sick his footwork is, Carrie. So that's what's standing out right now to Tyrell Williams.
Yeah, and baby boy in tow. Meanwhile, what did Antonio Brown have to say about building chemistry between Derek Carr and the other receivers?
Well, Carrie, what I thought was interesting is that Tyrell actually told me that they spent time together before the offseason conditioning program actually started. So he and AB were able to come to California and do some throw and catch with Derek Carr. And you know that AB has been underlining just how important it is to build camaraderie, spending time at Derek Carr's house, something that he didn't do with Ben in Pittsburgh. So just underlining how key that is and how much he knows that they will be able to do that once training camp starts and even before camp starts as well in July.
All right, it's important to have chemistry on and off the field. Meanwhile, let's talk about some other NFL news. Former Buccaneers defensive tackle Gerald McCoy visited the Ravens yesterday. What can you tell us about how that went?
Well, absolutely. He visited with the Ravens yesterday, and I got a text last night from a source that he was having dinner with the coaches and the teammates, and then that source also texted back last night saying that they hope that things carry over into the morning. That is the expectation right now, that they are still talking. I know the Ravens do not want him to leave Baltimore because they're in a clear, definite rivalry right now with the AFC North team in Cleveland with the Browns to try to get Gerald McCoy, who are absolutely also competing for his services as well. So we'll see if Gerald leaves Baltimore, what team he signs with, Kerry, or if he elects to actually visit another team and enter another organization into his free agency fray right now.
All right, thank you for that update. Always an education. You can catch Josina on NFL Live coming up at 1:30 Eastern right here on ESPN. Thanks, Josina.
Just a couple 43-year-olds playing a round of golf. Peyton Manning and Tiger Woods out there. We'll show you how that round went, plus how Boogie Cousins felt after another devastating injury